At 92 years old, Willie Nelson isn't just surviving, he's still breaking rules, turning heads, and living like the road is endless. While most people his age have slowed to a quiet hum, Willie's life still blares like an open highway anthem. He wakes up in his tour bus, sparks up a joint, picks up his guitar, and treats every day like it's a song waiting to be written. From his sprawling ranch to his secret mountain hideouts, his lifestyle is anything but ordinary. There are rituals, rumors, and routines that don't just raise eyebrows, they leave people speechless. Friends and family can't believe the pace he keeps, or the things he still insists on doing himself. He's built a world so full of music, mystery, and marijuana that it doesn't feel like retirement. It feels like rebellion. But recently, something new came to light, something that even longtime fans didn't expect. And what Willie just revealed about how he lives today will change the way you see him forever. Willie Nelson was never one to play by the rules, and even at 92, nothing's changed. He didn't follow the traditional path when he was young, and he's certainly not doing it now. He still wakes up on his tour bus most mornings, not in a rocking chair, not in some cushy retirement mansion, but on the road, surrounded by guitars, handwritten lyrics, and the sweet scent of his favorite cannabis blend. His day starts with a stretch, not a shuffle, and the first thing he reaches for isn't coffee, it's a joint. That's not some marketing stunt. That's just Willie being Willie. For him, smoking weed isn't a habit, it's a rhythm, a way to center himself before he writes, plays, or just stares out the window thinking about life. He says it calms his nerves, soothes the aches, and sparks his creativity. And if you've ever heard the songs he's still putting out, it's hard to argue with the results. His bus, the infamous Honeysuckle Rose, isn't just transportation, it's a rolling sanctuary. Inside are shelves lined with old books, photos of departed friends, jars of cannabis strains with handwritten notes, and, of course, Trigger, his battered Martin guitar that's traveled with him through every era. Willie sleeps in the same small bed he's had for years, keeps his window cracked to feel the wind, and refuses to let anyone else clean his instruments. There's a sense of routine, but not rigidity. Everything he does on his terms. Even at 92, he doesn't take orders, doesn't follow schedules, and doesn't answer to anyone but the music. He'll cancel a show if it doesn't feel right, or suddenly add one in the middle of nowhere, just because the spirit moved him. This isn't nostalgia, it's defiance. A quiet rebellion against the idea that age means limitation. Willie doesn't believe in expiration dates. He believes in staying in motion, and when you see how deeply that belief runs, how fiercely he holds on to his freedom, you start to realize Willie isn't just aging differently. He's rewriting what aging even means. What began as a long-running joke about Willie Nelson being the king of cannabis has quietly transformed into one of the most surprising business ventures in the music world. Willie's Reserve, his personal cannabis brand, isn't just a clever name slapped on some packaging. It's a full-scale operation that he helped build from the ground up, and at 92, he's still deeply involved. Every strain released under the Willie's Reserve label has been personally tested, approved, and often named by Willie himself. Some are mellow and smooth, others hit like a freight train, but they all share one thing: Willie's seal of approval. He's not just the face of the brand, he's the soul of it. Inside his private stash, you'll find handwritten notes on each jar, some labeled with phrases like "good for writing" or "night ride vibes." His home in Hawaii, often thought of as a peaceful retreat, is actually the nerve center for his cannabis empire. On any given day, growers, herbalists, and legal advisors pass through the property, discussing everything from new cultivation techniques to cannabis policy reform. Because what most people don't realize is that Willie isn't just pushing product, he's reshaping laws. He sits in on advisory boards, meets with lawmakers, and donates generously to organizations working to end marijuana criminalization. He's used his platform to fight for farmers, push for equity in the industry, and bring cannabis into the light, not as a drug, but as a medicine and a lifestyle. He's never been shy about his love for marijuana, But now it's more than personal, it's purposeful. And while other celebrity-backed brands come and go, Willie's reserve continues to grow, guided by the same principles that have defined his music: honesty, soul, and authenticity. It's not just about getting high. It's about healing, about legacy, about staying true. And in this strange, smoky corner of the cannabis world, Willie Nelson stands not just as a legend, but as a leader. Willie Nelson's daily routine isn't just unusual. It borders on the spiritual, the mystical, and, at times, the downright bizarre. At 92, you'd expect naps, nurse visits, and slow mornings. But for Willie, the start of each day is anything but ordinary. He rises before the sun, usually without an alarm, and immediately steps outside barefoot, no matter the weather. He believes the earth has a frequency, and he wants to feel it with his own skin. He spends his first moments in silence, breathing in the air and staring out into the horizon, whether it's the hills of Texas or the cliffs of Maui. After this grounding ritual, he lights his first joint, not for fun, but as he calls it, for clarity. Then comes the meditation, a simple session involving a Tibetan singing bowl, a few yoga poses he's adapted over the years, the single strum on his beloved guitar, trigger. That one note, he claims, tells me if today's going to be honest. His breakfast is usually plant-based, something from his garden if he's home, or a green smoothie if he's on the road. But the most peculiar part of his day happens without fail at 3 p.m. That's when Willie enters what he calls spirit hour. No phones, no visitors, no interruptions. Even his wife Annie and his kids know not to bother him. Some say he writes music during this time. Others whisper that he communes with old friends, those long gone like Waylon Jennings or Merle Haggard. A few even believe he uses the hour to reflect on his own mortality. But Willie never explains. He just grins and says, "That's between me and the notes." His evenings are quiet, but sacred. Sometimes he'll walk the property with a flashlight, humming unfinished melodies. Other nights, he'll sit under the stars with Trigger in his lap, strumming the same chord over and over until something clicks. It's not about routine, it's about rhythm, a life in tune. And for Willie, these odd rituals aren't about superstition, they're survival. They're how he's made it this far. Because in a world that constantly changes, Willie Nelson stays grounded by doing the most unpredictable thing of all, being himself. Most artists his age have long retired from the road, choosing comfort over chaos. But not Willie Nelson. At 92, he's still performing, not because he has to, but because he can't imagine life without it. But make no mistake, Willie doesn't tour the way others do. There are no massive entourages, no luxury demands, no preset stadium schedules locked months in advance. Instead, he picks and chooses the venues that feel right, often at the last minute, guided more by instinct than business. He's just as likely to perform at a 20,000-seat amphitheater as he is to show up unannounced at a roadside bar in Luckenbach. And when he plays, it's not a polished, scripted performance. His sets flow like conversations, filled with unexpected detours, long instrumental breaks, and personal stories that spill out between songs. Sometimes he'll stop mid-track, chuckle to himself, and tell a joke nobody else understands. Fans don't come for perfection, they come for presence. Because being in the room with Willie feels less like a concert and more like a spiritual gathering. His band is often made up of family members, sons, nephews, close friends, people who know how to follow his lead. Even when he veers off the map, there's no teleprompter, no click track, just feel, just memory. And what happens after the show is even more legendary. While most performers retreat to hotel suites, Willie heads back to Honeysuckle Rose, his tour bus, where the night is far from over. There, he'll invite local musicians, friends, or even complete strangers to climb aboard. Guitars get passed around, joints get lit, stories get told. Sometimes these impromptu jam sessions go until dawn, and sometimes they result in new songs that show up weeks later in his set list. It's his own kind of after party, one where fame doesn't matter, and the only currency is soul. At 92, he doesn't chase applause. He chases connection. And when you witness Willie on stage, giving everything he's got under the soft glow of a spotlight, it's clear. He's not performing out of nostalgia. He's performing because it's still the place where he feels most alive. Willie Nelson may live like a nomad, but the places he calls home reveal more about him than any interview ever could. Most people know about his Texas ranch, the sprawling piece of land where he raises horses, writes songs, and hosts his annual 4th of July picnic. But that's only the beginning. Tucked away in the lush hills of Maui is his Hawaiian retreat, a property that runs completely off-grid, powered by solar panels and surrounded by gardens that grow everything from kale to cannabis. There, the days are slow, the air is thick with salt and smoke, and his neighbors say you can hear soft guitar chords floating across the waves long after midnight. But perhaps the most mysterious of his hideouts is his Colorado cabin, a place so secluded it doesn't show up on maps. It's built right into the side of a cliff, designed for privacy, silence, and reflection. Inside are handwritten journals dating back decades, shelves of philosophy books, framed photos of old friends now gone, and sacred keepsakes that only Willie understands. No staff, no security, just solitude. He disappears there for weeks at a time, unreachable, unplugged. It's his temple, his fortress, his escape from fame and the frenzy of the outside world. Those who've been invited up say it's like stepping into another dimension, somewhere between a church, a library, and a ghost town. But for Willie, it's not about luxury. It's about energy. Each home represents a different part of his soul. Texas is his roots. Hawaii is his peace. Colorado is his truth. And no matter where he is, he follows the same rhythms. Early mornings, sacred rituals, private music sessions, and long, meditative walks through nature. These places aren't retreats from reality. They're expressions of it. They're how he survives the weight of legacy. Because when the world demands more of him than he can give, Willie simply vanishes into one of these quiet sanctuaries, and somehow he always returns with a new song. Even at 92, Willie Nelson remains a magnetic force for some of the most famous names in music, film, and beyond. His homes, especially the Texas Ranch and Hawaiian Retreat, are never short of visitors, but not in the way you'd expect. These aren't flashy parties or photo op gatherings. These are deeply personal pilgrimages. Stars like Woody Harrelson, Chris Christopherson, and Casey Musgraves still drop by, not just as friends, but as seekers. They come for the music, yes, but more often, they come for the peace. Because spending time with Willie isn't like spending time with anyone else. Conversations with him tend to drift into the metaphysical. You'll sit down to talk about songwriting and end up discussing the nature of the soul. He's full of strange wisdom, simple phrases that hit harder than entire books. Let the song play you, he once told a struggling artist who now swears it changed their entire career. He's played poker with presidents, jammed with rappers, and once sat in complete silence with Bob Dylan for 3 hours, neither saying a word, just passing a guitar back and forth. But what really draws people in is the way he listens. Willie listens like time doesn't exist. No rushing, no phones, just presence. There's no agenda, no performance, just shared space. And when it's time to play music, it's always raw, unrehearsed, deeply felt. Visitors say there's something about being in his presence that unlocks a part of them they didn't know was there. It's why so many of his friends call their visits resets. They come not to be seen, but to see themselves again. And it's not just artists, activists, spiritual leaders, even disillusioned politicians have shown up at Willie's door hoping for a moment of truth. He greets them all the same, with a smile, a song, and usually a freshly rolled joint. Some stay a night, some stay weeks, but all of them leave changed. Because being around Willie Nelson isn't just a visit, it's an experience. One that reminds you that fame fades, trends pass, but authenticity? That's forever. To the rest of the world, Willie Nelson is the iconic outlaw, the renegade poet with a guitar, the the joint-smoking sage who outlived almost everyone in his orbit. But to his family, he's something else entirely. He's Dad. He's Willie. And that title comes with its own unique kind of chaos. Growing up in the Nelson family was never about normalcy. There were no rigid schedules, no traditional bedtime routines, no soccer practices or Sunday church pews. Instead, there were hotel rooms, guitar cases, smoke-filled buses, and the low hum of an amplifier always buzzing somewhere in the background. Lucas and Micah Nelson, Willie's sons with wife Annie D'Angelo, grew up not just around music, but inside it. They were raised on the road, lulled to sleep by the rhythm of highway tires and their father's weathered voice echoing down from a stage. And yet, despite the turbulence, they speak of their father with the kind of quiet reverence reserved for monks and mystics. Lucas, now an accomplished musician in his own right, often describes his father as a man who lives in pure harmony with the moment. He recalls waking up to the smell of burning sage, watching his father stretch under the sunrise, roll a joint with the precision of a surgeon, and spend the next several hours writing lyrics no one else could have thought of. Micah, a more eclectic artist with a wild creative streak, describes Willie as an antenna tuned to something cosmic. Both sons have followed their father into the music business, but not blindly. They carved their own paths, but the Nelson blood is obvious in every lyric they write, every stage they walk. They carry their father's defiance, his openness, and most importantly, his honesty. But while the public marvels at Willie's charm and mystery, it's his wife Annie who sees the whole picture. She's been with him since the late 1980s, weathering every storm, from IRS raids to hospital scares, from the highs of Grammy wins to the lows of grief and loss. Annie is not just his wife, she's his compass. She organizes his life, protects his health, filters the chaos, and grounds the whirlwind. She manages his diet, his schedule, his medications, and still leaves room for his rituals, his spontaneity, and his fiercely independent spirit. When asked once how she's managed to stay married to Willie Nelson, Annie laughed and said, "You don't manage Willie, you just learn how to dance with him." She knows him better than anyone. She knows when his silence means he's writing something profound, when a certain chord means he's missing someone, when a new strain of weed means he's trying to forget something. And she knows, above all, that trying to change him would be like trying to cage wind. But even with all the quirks, the unpredictability, and the impossible pace, Annie sees the tenderness behind the myth. The man who sings to their dogs when he thinks no one's watching, the father who still checks in on his grown children, the grandfather who lets the littlest ones strum on trigger without flinching. The family doesn't tiptoe around Willie's fame. They embrace it, but they also protect the sacred parts of him that the cameras never catch. They know that behind the outlaw image is a deeply sensitive man who never stopped grieving his lost friends, who still cries when he sings "Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain," and who believes, more than anything, in the redemptive power of love. And while they know the world will one day mourn the icon, they also know that the man they call family has already lived more lives, touched more hearts, and given more of himself than anyone had the right to expect. In their eyes, he's not just a living legend. He's living proof that being unapologetically yourself, no matter how wild or misunderstood, is the greatest legacy of all. And when that final chord rings out, when Willie takes his last bow, his family will know that they didn't just witness history. They lived with it, they loved it, and they helped shape the last outlaw the world will ever know. There's a reason they call him the last outlaw. At 92, Willie Nelson stands in a space that no one else occupies, a living bridge between eras, between worlds, between the man he used to be and the legend he's become. Most artists fade with time, their relevance slipping into the rearview mirror, but not Willie. He's not just remembered. He's still creating, still evolving, still shocking people with how much life he has left in him. He's working on new music. He's still collaborating with artists half his age. He's still touring in that same old bus. And even now, He's dreaming up new ways to use his voice, not just in song, but in purpose. He funds farmers. He fights for cannabis reform. He speaks on animal rights, spiritual freedom, and staying true to your roots. And somehow, through all of this, he still finds time to sit on a porch somewhere, guitar in hand, playing a tune no one's heard yet. But perhaps what's most powerful about Willie isn't what he does, it's how he lives. He lives without fear, without compromise, without apology. He's lost close friends, seen the world change beyond recognition, outlived rivals, critics, even a few of his own myths. But through it all, he's held on to one thing, his authenticity, that unshakable sense of self. He never chased fame. It found him, and he never let it change him. He still writes songs the old-fashioned way, still travels with just enough, still chooses peace over polish. And maybe that's why people gravitate toward him. Because in a world obsessed with image, he remains a man of substance, a man of grit, a man who sings because he has something to say, not something to sell. When asked what keeps him going, he doesn't mention fame, fortune, or legacy. He just says, "I still love the music," and that's it. That's the fuel behind the fire that's burned for over 9 decades. Not glory, not applause, just love. Love for the melody, love for the moment, love for the mystery of life itself. And now, with 92 years behind him, Willie Nelson walks forward not as a relic, but as a reminder. A reminder that growing old doesn't mean growing silent, that freedom isn't a phase, and that the road never really ends. Because as long as Willie has breath in his lungs and strings under his fingers, the music will keep coming, the stories will keep flowing, and the outlaw will keep riding. And when that final note does come, when his boots finally touch the stars, we won't just remember the legend, we'll remember the way he made us feel wild, real, and beautifully alive.